You think you're pretty rational, don't you? Like, not perfectly rational. You know you have some blind spots. You've read enough to know that humans are a little broken, emotionally speaking. You've probably heard of confirmation bias. You've nodded along to a conversation about it at least once. You get it. Here's the thing, though. Knowing the name of a cognitive bias does almost nothing to protect you from it. In fact, and this is the part that should make you put your phone down, in some cases, knowing about a bias makes you more likely to think other people have it, while you quietly go on doing the exact same thing. Psychologists call this the bias blind spot. It is real, it is documented, and you almost certainly have it about something you care about right now. So this isn't going to be a listicle of weird quirks in the human brain. This is about one uncomfortable thing. Your brain is running software that was written for a completely different environment, and it is confidently leading you to wrong conclusions about your own life, your own decisions, and your own judgment. And it does it so smoothly that it feels like thinking. Let's actually get into it. Start with something small. Think about the last time you were in a grocery store and saw a product that said, "Now 25% more" on the label. Did you grab it? Did it feel like a good deal? Because here's what's actually happening in your head when that works on you. And it works on basically everyone, which is the embarrassing part. Your brain doesn't evaluate things in absolute terms. It evaluates them in relative terms. It needs an anchor. It needs a compared to what. And when you see 25% more, your brain immediately grabs that original quantity as the reference point. Even though you never verified what that quantity was, you have no idea if it was a normal amount or a deliberately undersized amount. And the extra you're getting might be 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. This is anchoring. And it doesn't stay in the snack aisle. When you walked into your first salary negotiation and the employer named a number first, that number anchored the entire conversation. Whatever came after was measured against it. When you looked at apartments and saw a $3,200 a month unit first, every $2,700 place you saw after that felt like a bargain. Even if $2,700 is, by any objective measure, an absolutely wild amount to spend on the privilege of hearing your neighbor's TV through the wall. Anchoring works because your brain is lazy in a specific and important way. It doesn't want to build an evaluation from scratch. It's expensive, computationally speaking. So instead, it looks for the nearest number and adjusts from there. The problem is that adjusting from an anchor almost always means you don't adjust far enough. The anchor sticks. It drags your final estimate toward it like a magnet. And the person who set the anchor, the store, the landlord, the employer, the car dealership, absolutely the car dealership, knows this. You can know all of that and still get anchored. Studies on anchoring have shown that people anchor even when the anchor number is randomly generated. When they watch a roulette wheel spin and land on a number, and then they estimate something completely unrelated, their estimate drifts toward the roulette result. A roulette wheel. There's no connection at all. Doesn't matter. Brain grabs it. This is where it starts to get a little uncomfortable, because now we have to talk about your opinions. Specifically, the fact that you formed a lot of them in the wrong order. There's a phenomenon called the backfire effect, or more accurately, a cluster of related effects that researchers have debated and refined over the years, but the core idea holds. When you encounter evidence that contradicts something you already believe, your brain doesn't always update the belief. Sometimes it doubles down. Sometimes it actually feels more certain of the original belief after encountering the contradiction, because now it has processed the counterargument and feels like it won an argument it was never really having. Think about any topic you feel strongly about. Politics is the obvious one, but it could be anything. A diet you've committed to, a company you worked for, a person you already decided you don't like. Now imagine someone comes at you with a well-sourced, reasonable counterpoint. What's your brain's first move? It's not, "Let me evaluate this with an open mind." The first move is defense. It looks for reasons the counterpoint is wrong. It questions the source. It remembers the last time someone from that side was wrong about something else. It protects the belief. And because your brain is actually pretty good at finding counterarguments when it's motivated, this is called motivated reasoning, and you are very good at it, it usually succeeds. It pokes a hole. And then it feels like you thought your way to the conclusion, like you considered the evidence and weren't persuaded, when actually the conclusion came first and the reasoning was hired to defend it afterward. This is not a moral failing. This is not about being stupid. Smart people do this more because they are better at constructing arguments. Genuinely smarter people are often better at motivated reasoning. The skill that helps you think rigorously can also help you build a more convincing case for whatever you already want to believe. The intelligence doesn't remove the bias. It just makes the bias more articulate. So what do you do with that? Sit with it for a second. The move most people make is to think, I can see when I'm doing this, so I'll catch myself. And that feels right. It feels like the mature, self-aware take. But the bias blind spot we talked about at the top means that self-monitoring is not as reliable as it feels. You can feel like you're being open-minded while your brain is still doing defense work you can't see. The feeling of being open-minded and the actual thing are not the same. You can feel like you considered something fairly and still have filtered the entire thing through a lens you didn't choose to pick up. The most useful thing, not the comfortable thing, but the useful thing, is to change the goal. Instead of trying to catch bias as it's happening, which is genuinely hard, you can design around it. Ask, what would change my mind about this, before you go looking for information? If you can't answer that question, if there's literally nothing that would change your mind, that's a signal. That's not a belief anymore, that's a wall. Okay. New layer. You are almost certainly worse at predicting your own future emotions than you think you are. Psychologists call it affective forecasting. The idea is that humans are continuously making predictions about how they'll feel in the future, about good things that haven't happened yet and bad things that might. And those predictions are systematically off in ways that matter. Here's the pattern. You overestimate the emotional impact of future events, both positive and negative ones. You think getting that thing will make you happier than it does. You think that bad outcome will be more devastating than it is. Both directions are off. You have a promotion in your mind that is going to fundamentally change how satisfied you feel at work. It probably won't, or not for as long as you think. You have a breakup in your past that you were absolutely certain you'd never get over. You got over it, and not because you're stronger than you thought, because your brain has a system for processing and normalizing experiences that you don't consciously control, and it's extremely good at its job. This system is called the psychological immune system in some of the research. Dan Gilbert, Harvard psychologist, wrote a whole book about this called Stumbling on Happiness, which is one of those books that sounds like a wellness thing, but is actually just quietly devastating about how bad we are at knowing what we want. The practical consequence of getting this wrong is not small. It means you make decisions based on how much you think they'll matter, and you're wrong about how much they'll matter, which means you're optimizing for the wrong things. You grind through a brutal 6 months for an outcome that you'll have adapted to and stopped noticing within 3. You avoid a conversation you need to have because you're predicting a level of discomfort that your brain will actually process in 2 days. You stay in a situation that's quietly making you miserable because the imagined pain of leaving feels enormous, and the actual pain would be significant but survivable. And then on the other side, the thing you keep buying to feel better. The version of that trip, that apartment, that relationship, that purchase that lives in your head and is going to finally scratch the itch that keeps coming back. It's going to scratch it for a bit, then the itch comes back, and your brain, rather than updating the model, just points at the next thing. This is not cynical. This is not nothing matters, so why try? The point is to get more accurate about where satisfaction actually comes from, which turns out to be much less about outcomes than about the texture of what you're doing day to day, which is genuinely one of the better supported findings in the well-being research, and also deeply inconvenient for anyone who's been using a list of future achievements as a reason to not take the current moment seriously. Right, keep going. There's one more bias that might be doing more damage than all the others, and it's the one that's hardest to explain because it hides in plain sight. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it has been wildly misunderstood by the internet, which is ironic. The version most people know, dumb people are too confident, smart people are too humble. There's usually a little graph. The dumb person is on the peak of Mount Stupid. You've seen this. You've probably used it to describe someone. Here's what the actual research says. And the actual research is more interesting and more uncomfortable than the meme. David Dunning and Justin Kruger, the psychologists who ran these studies in the late 90s, were specifically looking at people who were incompetent in a particular skill area and asked them to rate their own performance. The incompetent people overrated themselves. But, and this is the part the graph usually leaves out, the most competent people also misjudged themselves in the opposite direction. They assumed the task was easy for everyone because it was easy for them. They underestimated how much better they were than average. So it's not a story about dumb people being confident and smart people being humble. It's a story about everyone being bad at knowing what they don't know. The incompetent person doesn't know enough to see the gaps in their knowledge. The competent person doesn't notice others' gaps because they can't imagine not knowing what they know. What this actually means is that confidence is not a reliable signal of competence, in either direction. Someone being extremely confident about something is not evidence they're right, and someone being uncertain is not evidence they're wrong. Your brain does not always get this message. Your brain tends to interpret fluency and confidence as accuracy. The person who says the wrong thing confidently sounds in the moment like they know more than the person who says the right thing with appropriate caveats. This is how bad information spreads so well. Not always through lies, through confident wrong people and uncertain right people, and your brain's tendency to weight delivery over accuracy. And now the part you actually came here for, even if you didn't know it. All of these things, the anchoring, the motivated reasoning, the effective forecasting failures, the Dunning-Kruger blind spots, they don't just operate in isolation. They stack, they interact. You anchor your beliefs, then use motivated reasoning to defend them, then predict that abandoning them would be more painful than it would be, and you never get accurate feedback because you interpret the absence of contradiction as confirmation. This is not a broken system, by the way. It is a system that worked extremely well for the environment it was built for. A brain that had to make fast decisions about whether a sound in the bushes was a threat needed to pattern match fast, anchor on previous experience, and not waste time entertaining a lot of nuance about whether the threat estimate was calibrated correctly. Slow thinking got you eaten. The problem is the environment changed. The bushes are gone. The decisions are now, should I change careers? And is this relationship actually working? And which of these contradictory things I've read on the internet is true? And those decisions require slow, nuanced, uncomfortable thinking that your brain keeps trying to shortcut. The upgrade nobody warned you about is that being smarter in the modern world sometimes means deliberately fighting your own reflexes. It means noticing the anchor before you start adjusting. It means asking, what would change your mind? Seriously. And then going looking for that thing instead of the thing that confirms the answer you already want. It means accepting that you are going to feel wrong less often than you actually are wrong, because the feeling of being wrong requires a kind of doubt your brain will work hard to suppress. None of this is comfortable. It is genuinely uncomfortable to sit with. It's much easier to watch the video, nod, feel like you understood something, and then go back to holding all your existing beliefs the same way, with the new addition of knowing the words for why other people hold theirs so badly. That move, by the way, has a name too. It's the cursed part of learning about bias. The knowledge tends to function as a mirror you point at other people. He's anchoring. She's got motivated reasoning. Those people on the other side of that argument are just backfiring their own beliefs. The person in the group chat who just shared that thing is clearly in the Dunning-Kruger danger zone. And you, sitting there having just learned all of this, probably thinking, I'm going to be more self-aware about this from now on. Which is great. Self-awareness is genuinely useful. But there's a version of that thought that is, itself, a little too easy. The version where you feel like you've done the work because you understood the explanation. Where the feeling of insight becomes a substitute for the harder, slower, more annoying practice of actually checking your own reasoning in real time when something is on the line and you have a stake in the outcome. The people who get the most out of understanding this stuff aren't the people who feel the most illuminated in the moment. They're the people who got specifically more skeptical of their own confident moments, who built a small habit of asking, what am I not considering, before committing to something they really want to be true, who got a little slower to call someone else irrational without checking whether they'd examined the same premise from the other side. That's the actual deliverable, if there is one, not the satisfaction of knowing the terminology. A small, durable suspicion of your own certainty, which sounds like a loss, but is actually the thing that quietly separates good judgment from the expensive impression of it. You were always going to be a little irrational. So was I. That part isn't going anywhere. The question is just whether you know which direction your biases tend to pull, and whether you remember to check the pull before you call it thinking.